Hi there, Casey here from Mastin Labs, and thank you for joining us for our instant everyday tutorial in editing in Capture One. Throughout the course of this video, we're going to be talking about what's included in your pack. We're going to be talking about some best practices, our 3-step workflow, and how to use all of these awesome new tools. If you haven't already, before this point, let's pause the video and make sure that you have installed your styles for Capture One. After installing, you can go over to Custom Styles, and here you'll see Mastin Labs Instant Everyday. And here I'm going to minimize some of this, just get it out of the way while we are taking a peek at what is inside. So up at the top, you can see we have our film looks. Where we have the 6 films that we have found and really enjoyed and had a hard time, but a good time making these films for you guys. And we'll go ahead and explore these as we work through our 3-step workflow. Now, the 3-step workflow, really straightforward. It is first to apply the look, and then we can adjust exposure and correct for white balance. And actually, I think the white balance is pretty good. Maybe I'll add a little bit of warmth to it. But other than that, I think it's looking pretty good. Below our film looks, of course. So that's all you really need for the 3-step workflow. Now, we do have other tools here, which we will get to. One of the first ones we can take a look at is our white balance. Now, this is just a really straightforward tool. Essentially, it's just giving you different starting points. So whether you shot in daylight or cloudy, open shade, you can apply these different white balance starting points, and it just helps to get you there. And especially if you've shot a whole bunch of things that are on the wrong white balance, this can be a really handy tool. So for this next photo, we'll again go through our 3-step workflow before exploring some of these other tools. I will use P600, which is sort of that Polaroid instant film look. I've applied the look. I'm going to bring up my exposure, and then I'm going to cool this off and get some back of those some of those magenta tones that I love so much in Polaroid film. Below white balance, we have our tone section, which is built and based off of the tone profiles from the Fuji Frontier film scanner. These have been crafted in order to help you navigate some of those tricky lighting situations, maybe something that's a little bit too harsh on the contrast. Again, just a really quick way to get there. So if I want to increase my contrast in a specific area, whether that is within the highlights or the shadows, I'll use one of the hard tools. So all hard will hit both the highlights and shadows. All soft will recover data, softening that contrast in the highlights and shadows, and so forth down the line. On this one, I think I'm mostly after getting a shadow soft. I want to bring back a little bit of the detail that is in her hair. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll hit soft or shadow soft. And there you go. You can see immediately if I just sort of toggle that on and off, you can see it's recovering some of that detail. Now, one thing, if that exact amount is not necessarily what you're after and you want something a little less, one of my new favorite things is we can always apply that to a new layer. And under layer masks, you'll see here we have our shadow soft, and you can just dial it in from there. So maybe I want to recover it around here, and that looks nice. Yeah, that looks good. In fact, I'm actually going to add a little bit more magenta into this. There you go. So that is the basics of the tone profiles. Let's move on to our next image, and we'll start working with one of my favorite presets, which is Instax Color. And Instax Color is that faded, nostalgic look. I've applied the look. I'm adjusting exposure. You can see that there's some clipping in the skin. It's a little unpredictable, and that's one of the things I think I like the most about it. So I've applied the look. I've adjusted the exposure, and now I'm correcting my white balance, and you can just see this feels like that old film. It has strong saturation. It's a little unwieldy, and it's faded. It has just a little bit of fade and even grain. In fact, Instax Color is the first color preset that we have actually kept grain in it. We loved the soft look that the grain adds to this film, and so we have really just enjoyed it being present when we apply the look. Now, again, I'm sitting here, I think on this particular shot, I'm fine with my tone profiles. We have some other tools in our toolkit. We have lens correction, which can help with some of the vignetting and distortion around the edges. We have orange reduction. If the oranges specifically in skin feel like they are a little overpowered, you can use orange reduction, and that just takes the kind of the edge off. In fact, just looking at her skin right here, I'll go ahead and hover over orange reduction, and you can see that's just kind of clearing it up. For those high ISO images, we have noise reduction, and that just helps to bring back, again, just kind of clear up a little bit of that noise. It's a little more subtle, but it works nicely. Now, I will talk about strobe soften on our next photo, but for this, we're going to move past, and we're going to talk about the instant fade and grain. So this is adding a little bit more grain. It's adding a fade into this image. specifically in things that you just want to have even more of that nostalgic faded film look. If I go back to this previous image and we add that instant fade and grain, you can see it really dials it in sort of a very balanced way. And again, is adding a little bit of that grain to it as well. Now, one thing specific to the instant fade and grain is that this is a tool that when you click it, it is housed automatically in a layer of its own. And we did that so that, again, you can dial this in. If you don't like that strong of a fade, you can pull this back. And you can pull it back to 0, in fact, where it's not applied. For this particular image, I mean, honestly, right around 50 or so seems like it looks good. And we can check the before and after. And yeah, I'm liking how that looks. Let's go ahead. We'll move into our next style, and that is SX70 black and white, which is just such a phenomenal. I love this. It has like the perfect balance of fade and contrast to it. All the Polaroid films like SX70 have such a strong, like it's easy for it to get blown out. So we've done our best to capture that sort of strong contrast look while still reining in the detail on those high highlights and low, shadows. Wanted to pay homage to the ability of this film while still giving you the capacity of your cameras. So, okay, here we go. We've gone ahead. I've applied that look. Now I'm going to go down and let's see what else. Oh, strobe soften. So I'm going to go ahead and apply strobe soften. And strobe soften is just a tool that is going to help, again, it's another contrast mitigation tool specifically built for when you are using on-camera flash or strobes. And it's just there to help kind of rein in that contrast. You can see it is dropping a little bit of the overall contrast in the image, but in a very subtle and soft way that looks natural and good. And yeah, it looks really nice. With this image, I think I could add a lens correction to that. And I didn't do the exposure adjustment really because I think it looks good. With this, maybe I could do highlight soft and see how it feels, but I don't know. I think it looks good where it is. And yeah, let's move on to our next image. And in this image, we'll actually talk about the last two of our black and white presets. The first one being P600, which is it is very focused on reds and oranges being a lot darker. So as you can see, her skin goes dark. Now that is so that it balances nicely with blue skies and blues in your images. As you pull it up, as I bring up my exposure, you can see that this is just perfectly balanced between the sky and her skin. And yeah, it looks really nice. It is more flat than something like SX70 black and white, which has a stronger contrast, stronger black point, and softer than our next one, which I'll move to, which is the Instax black and white, which has has darker blues and brighter skin tones. In fact, it almost looks like it has a yellow filter on it, like in the old days of shooting film. One other thing specific to the Instax black and white is that it has a slight tint of blue to it. It just it gives us a little bit of a silver cast color or paper color to the edit itself, and I think it is really nice. I love the grain. I love how nice it looks, and I think this is a really fun one, especially for people. We'll go ahead and we'll try it on this one as well, and you can see, yeah, again, just how much it illuminates skin and skin tone, and yeah, it looks really nice. So I've gone ahead, I've applied that look, move back to this one. And we can talk about some of these other tools that are new to us in Capture One. If you're familiar with our Lightroom tools, these have existed there for a little while, but finally we have some capabilities of AI tools in Capture One, and we're really excited about them. So the first one is Spotlight. Now Spotlight, what it does, I'll go ahead and apply this, is it helps to separate your subject from the background by bringing up the exposure of your subject and bringing down the exposure of the background. And it does this using the built-in AI tools available within Capture One. And yeah, it looks really nice. In fact, I'll go ahead, I'm gonna hit reset and we'll try this one in color. I know I really enjoy this image, especially using the Instax. I love how vibrant those colors are. So, okay, I've applied my look, adjusted the exposure, and now maybe I'll cool it off a little bit, bring more of those blue skies back and just give more saturation to them by cooling it off. I think her skin still looks pretty good. Now I'll go down to my AI tools again, and let's do Spotlight, and we can watch as the sky behind her will drop down and her exposure comes up. And again, it's just there to help separate her from the background. This tool and all of the AI tools are also layered. So if you would like to dial them in further, we can. I'll go to Spotlight Background, and here I have my opacity at 50%. And if I would like to drop it more, I can. I can bring this up to 100. And if I'd like to get rid of that adjustment, I can by just bringing it back to 0. I actually think that just right on the nose when it came out, that was good. We can do the same with our subject, bring up their exposure by bringing it to the right, or bring it back to where it originally was by bringing it back to 0. But again, I think around 50 was looking pretty good. Now, our light and area assist is for when you want the whole image to come up in exposure. And you may ask, why am I not just bringing up the exposure? Well, the reason is that we wanted to, A, give you your own control over those two separate things, the background and the subject itself. And by applying this tool, you're actually bringing up and shifting some of the contrast between those two things. So both are getting brighter, but at different intervals, and they're also allowing you to have more finite control, which I speak for myself, is that something I'm really after in my edit. I want it to look exactly how I want. So if I bring it to the right, you can see the exposure comes up. Bring it to the left, exposure goes down. For this one, we'll just go all out. I'll bring it all the way up to 100. And for our background, bring it back to 0 or all the way up. And that is just helping to, again, dial in that light and airy look in a much faster way. You don't have to make those selections, figure it out for yourself. It just does it very quickly by applying this tool and then adjusting these as you'd like. Go ahead and I'll undo this. Before I click on our Dark and Moody Assist tool, let's talk about what goes into making a dark and moody image. So first of all, this is a bright and vibrant image. This one out of the gates isn't going to do you a lot of good. However, if I go into this edit with a mindset that I want it to be darker and moodier, I can bring my exposure down, and let's go ahead and I'll apply my assist. So this is still going to work with the exposures in the background and in the foreground to help to give you the right balance of those two things. We can bring it up, bring it down. Here's where it initially was, and here's where it comes up. I'm adding contrast to that area, which is beautiful and present in a lot of moodier images. Similarly with the background, as I bring it up, this is actually getting a little lighter, and as I bring it down, we're just really darkening and putting some of the emphasis on further on the subject. One thing to be aware of when it comes to using these AI tools specifically to capture one is that their subject and background selection is good and is going to get better. There are just areas to be aware of. So something like this, where I'm seeing some of these spots in the trees where it's missed, the mask has kind of missed the point. So what I can do is I can hit the M key and I can see my mask for this particular thing. From there, I can now paint, and I can just click on that and click on that. And that will help, again, just sort of mitigate it. I'm using my AI brush, which does a really good job. It's not perfect, but it is good. If you want to, you can also just go in with your regular brush and just give it a quick once over. Yeah, it's pretty sloppy. You can obviously go a lot more detail. I'll hit M again, we'll revert, and there you go. Now I can just further dial that in, and I'm not seeing any of that weird blue missing parts of the masks, and it still looks pretty good. So there you go. Below our AI tools, we have our grain sections, and these are just grain that you can choose. We have a 35mm grain, which obviously was not present in the Instax or Polaroid or instant film era, but it is. But we did want to give you that option just because we think it looks so nice. Similarly with the medium format grain, and the grain is really there. It just helps to add texture. You know, it's a lot of fun and just very beautiful. So here's without, and here is with, and you can see I'm looking specifically up there. It does just such a great job. With medium format, you're adding texture still, but in just a dialed back way. It's more fine grain, and it looks really nice. I actually think this looks really good with the 35mm grain. There you go. Now, one other tool that we have that you haven't seen here yet is our light leaks. And the light leaks for Capture One, we have to go into Photoshop. So we'll go ahead. I'm going to do that real quick. Select my image that I want to add a light leak to. I will right click and I'm going to say Edit with Photoshop and bring it in. Go ahead, hit Enter, and let Photoshop come up. Now that I have Photoshop open, I can click here. The actions themselves are also included in your download under the manual install folder. To get there, I can click on these bars, say load actions, and navigate to, let's see, I'll do it this way. I'll open my desktop styles, open the manual import, and here you can see the light leak Photoshop actions, and I can open them there to bring them in. Of course, I've already done that, and here they are. Now to make these work, I'm just going to go ahead and hit play, and it will change and convert this background image to a smart object, as well as apply the light leak. And then we can adjust its opacity as sort of a strength. I can click this, and we can bring it down if I want a little bit less. If I just want a hint of that light leak, there you go. If I want it at full strength, there you go. But this allows you to really just play with it the way that you want to. I think for this image, I like it at 100%. If you want to go back, try some of the other light leaks, go back to your history, go back to the beginning of you opening the image, and click on the next light leak. Here we go. And there's our next light leak. Can bring it back, and we can just work our way through. And I can just keep going and all the way through. I think with this one, I like where it is. I'm going to dial back the opacity just a little. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I like how that looks. It looks like it's just fading into the frame. So I'm going to hit OK, and then I'll hit save. And when this is finished saving, we'll navigate back into Capture One. And there we go. I just saw that updated. So here we have our two versions. We have the one we edited, and then when we brought it into Photoshop to add those light leaks. But there you go. There you have it. Thank you guys so much for joining us on this editing tutorial. If you have further questions, feel free to reach out to us at support@mastinlabs.com or directly at m.me/mastinlabs. Until next time, have a great day and happy editing.